Round Robin. I'm your host, Robin McCormick with the City of Hampton. And today we're going to talk with a member of the Housing Authority about some projects they have going. Many people think the Housing Authority is low-income, project-style housing. They do a lot more than that. Let me introduce you to Yvonne Hodges. Welcome.
Thank you.
You really work much more with single-family houses a lot of times, or smaller multifamily houses than the big kind of apartment-style projects.
Correct.
And so tell me, it's so cool because you guys do this mix of things. Like you go in and tear down blighted properties, especially commercial properties or blighted homes, you know, where usually it's a willing seller. In fact, I think they knock on your door a lot.
Absolutely. I get phone calls, emails all the time, interested, willing sellers. Maybe they're in a situation where a family member died, left them a property that they can no longer maintain. They just don't have an interest in living in the neighborhood any longer, and they're wanting to sell property.
And, you know, so it's not like I think people have this image where, you know, the city or the housing authority, or we're all the same anyway, you know, kind of come in and take out neighborhoods. It's not really like that. You're helping people a lot of times who are in a bind because a property hasn't been well maintained or isn't really worth maintaining, isn't going to sell very well because it doesn't meet the needs of today's families who are buying.
Everything is voluntary. Any rebuilding we do, we look to bring more amenities to the house. A lot of the houses are older, small, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 1 bath. We try to return at least a 3 bedroom, 2 bath house to the lot.
And sometimes you have to combine lots to do that because
Absolutely.
Hampton, as old as we are, you know, people bought different houses in the 20s and 30s
Right.
than our families want today. And so a lot of those small houses just can't resell.
No, a lot of the lots were 25 feet wide. Some cases we've combined 2 and 3 lots to make a wider lot to allow for a larger house.
Now, what does this do for a neighborhood? How does this have an impact on the people in the neighborhood who maybe have houses that they want to keep up or have reinvested or made their houses bigger and are staying in that neighborhood?
You can certainly see pride in ownership when you have multiple developers in a neighborhood working and building. It just spreads throughout the neighborhood. People get excited. You actually see people interacting with their neighbors. They're out on the porch. They're walking down the street. They're having barbecues. It's just obvious in the pride they take in ownership.
Well, I mean, you have to think about what that house being vacant and deteriorating did to the neighborhood. So that reinvestment has to have a much more positive.
Absolutely.
Let me talk a little bit about Sussex because that neighborhood's near mine. I drive past it all the time. It's good size, sturdy brick homes that absolutely have not got the right floor plan for today.
Most of those units started out as duplex apartments. There was a unit below and a unit above.
And let's talk, they were built, was it
Yes,
wartime?
it was post-war. Back in the 30s and 40s. They were...
And it's along Kickotan Road,
Yes.
close to downtown,
Correct.
right by Van Costa's, you know,
Right.
if you know the neighborhood.
The neighborhood backs up to Chesapeake Avenue and fronts Kickotan.
And it was, when you guys picked that as a focus area, it was heavily rental.
Correct.
Right? And moving in a not positive direction.
Correct. We've tried to stabilize the neighborhood with home ownership. So far, we've rehabbed approximately 12 houses and sold them. We currently have 1 under rehab right now. When we started in the neighborhood, yes, it was majority rental. We're hoping that our efforts have stabilized the ownership rate, and we hope to continue to do more ownership projects in that neighborhood.
Now, when you work with homeowners, it isn't just like somebody off the street. This is frequently helping somebody get that first house.
Sure. We have several programs that we offer with the Housing Authority. We have home buyer clubs that last 15 to 18 months where someone that's interested in purchasing a home can come in and join the club. They meet once a month. Our counselor takes them through the stages of home ownership, helps them repair their credit, gets them ready for ownership.
So these are, you know, this is not a strictly low income, you know, give the homes away. This is working class people who need maybe to work on their credit, work on their ability to make, not to make the monthly payments, but maybe to get the down payment together. Maybe they're, teachers, firefighters, welders. These are people who are stable folks who are working, but maybe need a little bit of assistance for that first house.
Yes, absolutely. We do provide down payment and closing cost assistance for our buyers that purchase homes through the Housing Authority.
Which is huge. Boy, I remember my first house. It's not easy.
Right.
I had to cash out, some of my retirement to get that down payment. It is hard when you're young to save up and to be able to do that. Why do we want, and certainly any locality needs a mix of rental properties. I mean, I rented when I was first out of college. Everybody goes through those stages. But why is home ownership a stabilizing thing for a community?
Sometimes absentee landlords don't have good control over their tenants that are in their property. They don't have any idea of what goes on a daily basis, which can actually hurt a neighborhood that's fragile or that's trying to do better.
And when you own the home, you take some pride in it.
Absolutely.
You try to keep it up. For most of us, it's our biggest asset.
Absolutely.
And we don't want it to fall into disrepair.
No.
We want to be able to sell it at some point for whatever we're going to do in the future. So you do see people and doing more things like keeping the grass cut, plantings that make it attractive, and having those community values,
Right.
having kids in the schools, volunteering, voting, being involved in their community, creating communities and neighborhoods.
Absolutely.
So, infill housing, you guys have this mix. So in Sussex, they're sturdy houses.
Correct.
But they need work.
Right. A lot of work, most of them.
But there are places, and I know this was related to master plan and what the neighborhood wanted, commercial properties along Kickitan Road in particular that weren't working for their owners, that some of which were abandoned or people wanted to sell and turn it more into a residential neighborhood.
Correct. The master plan called for more single-family homes along that Kickitan corridor. So ongoing acquisition has been in place for several years. We have now cleared approximately 10 lots that we intend to do some infill housing with.
And a lot of times now, and you guys can deal with both kinds of properties, whether it's a lower moderate income house or whether it's a market rate. I'm learning all these terms from coming to meetings from you, Yvonne.
Absolutely.
What you're seeing is a demand for market rate housing in that area.
Absolutely. We have a mix of families
That's okay.
We have a mix of families looking for quality homes in.
It's such a good neighborhood. I think Wythe is struggling with this image where it is a post-war, well, pre-war, some parts of it, because the streetcar went along, but a post-war neighborhood with good sturdy bones on the houses, but a mix. You go from smaller 2-bedroom kind of bungalow houses to big old giant houses on the water. And so you look at that Kickitan area and think, that's an attractive place for new houses, quality construction, people to want to live. And you guys are going to help make that happen, but you're facing some challenges.
Absolutely. It's really hard to take an older neighborhood and incorporate new houses to look and fit in with the rest of the character of the neighborhood. We try really hard to make that happen. We want you to be able to ride down the street and not realize this house was built in 2014, 2015, and be able to compare it to a house that was built in 1950.
Yeah, so it's got to all work together. And you can tell places where it hasn't, where we haven't always done that. But, and so you have a lot of rules, basically. You guys call it a pattern book, right?
Correct.
So when a developer wants to build, and we'll use Kickitan as an example, or Old Hampton, it has to kind of fit in. And you don't want something that sticks out like a sore thumb.
Right.
Now the challenge is that's expensive for builders to build that high quality product, that looks like it blends in with, my house back in the day, brick, plaster walls, a certain kind of colonial style or whatever. So how do you get developers to build the product you want?
We're using that in our Old Hampton neighborhood. We've created a preferred builder program. It's an application process that builders go through. I vet their references. Once we approve them, we then open up what we call our dollar lot inventory list. It's a list of properties that are citywide that we're selling to builders for $1. We do have standards that we put in place as far as the type of materials they have to use, the size of the house, things like that to help stabilize the neighborhood.
See, I think people hear this dollar lot thing and think it's just a sweet deal for developers. You're just handing off a city property for only $1. You're doing it because you have to subsidize a little bit to get what we want for the community.
Absolutely. Some of the things that we require are brick skirting on all 4 sides of the foundation. Some of the houses require hardy plank instead of vinyl siding, which is much more costly than vinyl siding. So there are things that we look at and we incorporate into our contracts.
And that is an investment in the neighborhood, an investment in rebuilding and strengthening some of these older communities where the residents have, or they've either aged and can't really keep up, or they've moved out and it's not reselling very well. But it's rebuilding those communities.
Absolutely. Right now in our Old Hampton neighborhood, there are currently 5 builders working in that neighborhood simultaneously.
And you know, that's a neighborhood where sometimes they come to city council or they talk to, you know, they feel ignored. And when you see the city and the housing authority as partners working together to acquire and rebuild, you know, it's got to give those residents some level of confidence and satisfaction that we're not just leaving them out there.
Absolutely.
Is it personally, I mean, I see you getting involved, and you know, you're an executive and you're in the meetings, but you're like out there in the houses and working with the developers. You're very ground floor.
Yes. Personally, I would say I speak to my builders at least once a week. We're constantly in contact. I talk with their realtors all the time. I work hand in hand with our builders and developers to help them through the process.
Is it a personal commitment for you, Yvonne?
Absolutely.
Why?
I can't answer that.
You just, I mean, is it building the community? Is it helping individuals? Is it, you know?
Ultimately, I think my reward is seeing a first-time home buyer receive the keys and walk into their house. I like to drive through the neighborhood and be able to see the kids out in the yard playing, the pride that they take in their house when they hang a wreath on their front door for the first time. I believe home ownership is something everyone should be able to achieve if that's what they want.
That's awesome. See, that's, you know, and I can see it. Like you, when you speak about this stuff, you do it with a personal conviction, and that's huge.
Thank you.
And you guys use, this isn't all city money. I think that's important to say too. You work through a variety of federal programs to help fund some of these first-time home buyer kinds of initiatives. You use a real combination of things that makes sense in every situation.
Correct. The majority of our lots that we're offering for $1, those were purchased with federal funds that we received from HUD.
And so those need to go to, you know, they need to be a little bit more affordable.
Correct.
But they're still going to people who are going to make those mortgages, who are going to pay for them. It's not,
That's correct.
You know, a Section 8 kind of situation.
No, the Housing Authority doesn't offer any mortgages. The buyer still has to go to the bank and qualify for a loan on their own.
So people who are out there looking, maybe who want to be that first-time home buyer, should call, and I just called y'all the Housing Authority. It's the Hampton Redevelopment and Housing Authority, and get involved in some of your programs and look through some of these neighborhoods and think about, you know, moving back.
Absolutely. We currently have 5 houses under construction right now that I anticipate will be ready within the next 60 days, and we'll be looking for fresh new home buyers.
That sounds great. Thank you, Yvonne. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching. I hope if you are a home buyer and you're in looking for that first home, maybe need a little bit of assistance, you could call HRHA and see if they can help you. And also if you're a member of the community, live in one of these older neighborhoods and see the reinvestment going on and the return to neighborhood values and community associations, and understand what we're trying to do here and how we're following the blueprint laid out in the master plans by the community themselves. Thanks for watching.